Hi, it's Gary. Welcome to today's video. Today, fountain pen showdown, taking a look at the Jinhao x159 and doing a showdown with Jinhao x159. The x159, I believe it's a slightly updated model. What we're going to do is take a look at the two pens. We'll walk through the bodies. We'll do some size comparisons. I'll do some weights and measurements, a writing sample with each. Then I'll give you my thoughts on these and we'll look at how they compare against each other. Welcome down to the mat. So here we've got the Jinhao 159 and the Jinhao x159. The x159 being the newer model. Rather than going through them both individually, what I'm going to do is just really look at what the difference is between them. And that's where we can focus on what differentiates each pen. So let's turn it around to the side. I'll fetch this one out here just so we see a side view. So in terms of the shape, the first thing you know, if I can not knock it off my stand, there we go. Not having a good day today, are we? So the first thing you notice, the 159 ever so slightly longer. Not by much, but it is longer. If we start with the cap now, the cap finials here, slightly different shape. The one on the X159 seems to be more curved than what I'm seeing here on the 159. Gonna get a bit painful with this X and 159 and then just 159. We'll get there though, won't we? When we look at how the cap is, the 159, this is just to my eye. You might see something different, but to me, this is tapering. Whereas with the X159, that seems to be more straight all the way down. We've got a definite taper here until we get maybe 2/3 down the clip. So difference with the clip, that's where it is noticeable. We've got this new design. I've heard people describe it as like a sword. It doesn't look much like a sword to me, but I can see where they're coming from. Let's pop these next to each other again. We've got a wider band here. We've got their Jinhao and then 159. The band here, if we go around, we've got Jinhao and X159. Slightly different positioning for the engraving on both the pens. And as you can see, the one on the 159 looks about double the width. We've then got a slightly longer cap here on the 159 than what we see on the X159. The bodies with the 159 seems to go about halfway down, then starts to taper in. With the X159 seems to go to maybe 2/3 or 3/4 of the way down, then it tapers in. We've got a gold coloured band on each, then at the end we've got these end caps, and they actually look fairly similar. Let's take a look inside the pen. So with the 159 it takes half, one to come off, very easy to uncap. With the X159 we go half, 1, 1.5, 2, about 2 1/4 turns. So yeah, a lot more turns there. This then shows us what the big difference between the two pens are, and it's to do with the nib. On the 159 we've got a number 6 size nib. The X159 has got a number 8 size nib. It's the only number 8 size nib that I've got. If we look at the 159's nib, so this is the old style Jinhao, so we've got 2 tones. Below the breather hole we've got the Jinhao logo, the word Jinhao, and then 18 kgp. No mention of the nib width, and if I turn this to the sides, I can't even see it engraved on the sides. But this is a medium nib. If we look at the X159, more or less a similar nib there. I say it's bigger, it's number 8. We've got below the breather hole the logo, the word Jinhao. Then on here we do have the size of the nib. This is F for fine. I could only find a fine nib when I was looking for this. That seemed to be the only size nib available. I hope eventually they'll start making mediums. Ideally, I'd love to see a broad nib. And as I've already said, it's my only number 8 size nib, so I don't even have the choice to swap it. and the nib's fine. My preference though is usually broad nibs. Let's turn the pens over and we'll look at the feeds. You know, noticeable difference there. You expect that though. Bigger nib, isn't it? The sections, it's just black here on the 159, whereas on the X159, the material there continues the colour from the body and the cap. So I do like that. I like the way it all flows together. Whereas on the 159, you know, it just looks like it was, oh, we've got a black section here. Let's shove that on. Let's take off the bodies. I've got one there trying to escape. You know, the converters, they're both the same. They're Jinhao converters. Now, I'm going to try an experiment here. I haven't tried this yet. I'm going to take the 159 body. Will it fit there? It doesn't even fit on the X159. So that was worth trying that. I'm going to pop these back together and then we'll do some size comparisons. Here's my standard size comparisons, the Pilot Metropolitan, the Lamy Safari. Definite difference there, I expected that. Let's take the caps off. With the caps off, I've tried to line up the tip of the nibs. We're actually very similar, aren't we, in terms of length? But when I line it up by the bottom of the section, both the 159 and X159, same length and a little bit shorter even than the Metropolitan. I'm not going to show these posted. What I'm going to do is fetch in two pens that are in roughly the same price range. The two pens I brought in are Platinum Preppy, $8 Aussie. Jinhao 159, $6.82. Call it $7 Aussie. That's when I bought it. It's more than that now. Jinhao x159, $12 Aussie. And finally, I've got a Pen BBS 494 piston filling pen, $8 Aussie. I've tried to fetch in at least one non-Chinese pens, which is why I brought in the Preppy. Now the Preppy does not come with a converter. Both the Jinhaos do, and obviously the Pen BBS doesn't need one. If you want to buy a converter for the Preppy, I've got to be honest, the converter costs more than the actual pen. When I use this, I tend to eyedropper it. And what I would do is fill it with ink, make sure that the threads are coated with silicone grease, and then that's how I use that pen. Let's pop the caps on these. So with the caps on, you know, these two, they're definitely a lot shorter and they're an awful lot lighter. Talking about weights, what I'm going to do is swap over and fetch in the scales of weighing. Here's the scales of weighing, and this is where one of the big differences between the two pens comes up. We'll start with the 159. The full pen, 49 grams. The X159, 29 grams. An awful lot lighter. This is an acrylic material, whereas the 159 is metal. If we look at the body, 30 grams for the body of the 159. That's more than the entire X159 pen. The X159, 18 grams. Caps, 19 grams for the 159. 11 grams for the X159. As I say, for me, this is where the big difference comes in. I've watched a lot of reviews of these pens, and a lot of reviewers are saying that they prefer that the X159 is lighter and they like that. I'm the complete opposite. I like weighty pens. I find the X159 just feels too light when I'm using it. I really like the weight of the 159, and I'd love it if I could get the 159 with that number 8 size nibs. Obviously medium nib rather than the fine, but I just like the weight of the 159. And if I was pushed to say which one would I get, I would say I would buy another 159. Although I do intend to get some other X159s, but I want to wait and see what happens with the nibs and also with the colours of the body. Let's get this out of the way and we'll fetch in the notepad of testing. Here we've got the notepad of testing. This is Oxford Optic paper. This is in a black and red A5 notebook. The first pen we're going to use is Jinhao 159. Now, I'm going to be very honest with you. These past couple of weeks I've been having an awful time with this pen. The nib has been drying up terribly. The temperature here in Australia, we're middle of the summer, and most days it's well above 30 Celsius. I mean, yesterday was 38. And I think that doesn't help with the nib, and I think that's part of the reason it dries out so easily. And also I've just done a little bit of testing, and obviously with all the taking of the cap on and off during the earlier parts of this recording, it also dried the nib out. So hopefully it should be working fine now. So we've got here a Jinhao x159 with a medium nib. The ink, no it's not, we're going to say cost, aren't we first? $7 Aussie when I bought it. That was nearly 2 years ago. The ink is Dominant Industry Lungo. Gorgeous dark brown ink. I really like this. When it dries, hopefully you'll see there might be a little bit of a green sheen to it. Drying times, so we got immediate, 10 seconds, 30 seconds, really wet combo this, 1 minute. Still wet after a minute. I'm not going to do a 2-minute test though. I'm going to move the mic down to the page so you can hear the pen write. Quite an audible writer that you can really hear it. It doesn't feel rough though. There's feedback, you can feel it writing, but it's not unpleasant. Line variation, there's no pressure. This is with some pressure. I see a fairly wider line. The nib itself does actually feel a little bit on the soft side. The line's going across. That's no pressure, with pressure, none, with, none, and with. So I can certainly see a wider line there. I wouldn't push it too hard though. I don't end up destroying the nib. The nib, yes, I know it's only cheap, but it's still quite a nice nib. Flow. Keeps it really nicely. As I say, the only problem, and I think it's to do with the weather here, this nib dries up very, very quickly. So that's the 159. Next, we're going to look at the X159. Now, where the conditions have been the same, the nib on here has not dried up. So there's another difference for you. But let's write. So we've got here, we've got a Jinhao X159. Silly Gary, I put an X up there, that's not. Fine nib. Cost me 12 Aussie dollars. You know, $5 more, but that's nearly double the price. The ink, it's also Dominant Industry. Lungo. One of the things people have been asking a number of times is for me to use the same ink when I'm doing these showdowns. So that's what I'm going to try and do. I'm not going to guarantee it in every showdown video because I do use these pens, but where possible, I'm going to try and use the same ink. Drying times, so we go immediate, 10 seconds, 30 seconds, that's nearly dry at 30 seconds, belt and braces, 1 minute. Yeah, after a minute, as we expect, that's nice and dry. Going to move the mic down to the page. Just move this page ever so slightly. The nib feels stiff. It's not as audible as when I'm writing with that medium nib on the 159. I'm not sure which I prefer. I think I like the way that the nib feels here with the X159. Let's look at line variation. So we go with no pressure. Let's add a bit of pressure. As I said, fairly stiff feeling nib. Lines across. So not much in the way of line variation at all. There's no pressure, that's with pressure. None with, none with. Slightly wider line though. Might be there because there's more ink coming out as I put more pressure on it. Flow. Again, keeps up really nicely. So what's my thoughts on these pens? I'm not going to give them scores, I'm just going to give you my thoughts. With the X159, it's the weight which does it for me. I very much prefer the weight. I like the medium nib. With the X159, bit too light. The fine nib, bit too fine for me. That's a very, very personal thing though. I say I normally prefer the broader nibs. Hopefully, they'll come out with a medium version of the X159. I like the way they both write. You know, I've used the same ink. Just look here, it's still wet because I've just smudged it with the pen. I wonder, do we see any of that green sheen on here? Now, I don't see any personally, but it might come over on the camera. What I'm going to do is fetch in this. This is 52 GSM Tomoe River paper. So here we've got Dominant Industry Lungo in the 159. Here, again, you see that gorgeous brown. We've got loads of shading coming through. We should hopefully be able to see a little bit of the green sheen. Not sure if it'll come through on the camera today, though. The lights in here are fairly bright. Looks really nice. If I go over the page, here we've got the X159. Big difference in the writing, isn't there, between that medium and that fine nib. Again, get a lot of shading coming through on here. Still see a little bit of the sheen, not a lot, but there's still hints of it, but you've got to really look for it. I like the number 8 size nib. I like the way it looks. I think that looks quite nice. You know, let's again just have a quick look at the two of them together. The X159, that nib looks a lot more substantial, doesn't it? Would I buy these pens again? I would buy both of them again. I do prefer, as I say, the weight of the 159. The X159, I could live with it being lighter. It wouldn't bother me too much. I just want a medium or a broad nib, please. That's all I asked for. If that's something that's in the plans, thankfully, yes, I will definitely be buying some of them. There currently aren't many colour options for the X159. The 159, loads of different options out there. I've only got two 159s. I've got this and I've got a blue one. I've only got this one X159. As I say, if they fetch out a medium, definitely I'll buy one of those, give that a try. At the moment, I'm not sure. I do want to get a green one, but I'm not sure if I want it with a fine nib. To me, yeah, it's a nice nib, but not exactly what I would say is a pen that I like to use. So this, it's my thoughts on the Jinhao 159 versus the Jinhao x159. I hope you've enjoyed today's video. Have you got either of these pens? Have you got both? What are your thoughts about them? Please drop a comment down below. Let's kickstart that conversation. Please hit the thumbs up button. Every time you like, every time you comment, just helps with the YouTube algorithm. If you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel so that you can get new videos as I release them. I'll talk to you again soon.